The night she was framed by a scoundrel, she spent the night with a stranger who turned out to be the most powerful man in the Bo family, Bo Wang. After that, she couldn't escape his grasp. She ran into an abandoned outdoor amusement park, running as fast as she could, not caring when her shoes fell off. She stepped on sharp stones, and the blinding sunlight felt like it was swallowing her whole. Her world was dark, and the footsteps behind her were getting closer. A young man and woman, out of breath, ran in and looked around. "Where did that blind girl go?" the girl grumbled. "Who told you to let her out of your sight?" Feng Chao, frowning, scanned the massive, quiet amusement park. A few seconds later, trying to be patient, he put on a smile and shouted, "Jiling, stop messing around, come out, okay? I'll take you home." This is a good thing, he's Bo Wang, the eldest son of the Bo family. If you have his child, we'll never have to worry about food and drink again. Be good and come out, and be careful with your stomach. I promise I won't hit you again. Hearing this familiar voice, Lu Jiling was filled with despair. At 15, her family went bankrupt, and then a fire destroyed her home and killed her family. She went blind overnight. After that, she was taken in by Feng Zhenxing's family and lived there for 5 years. Feng Chao, Zhenxing's only son, beat and kicked her and flirted with her caretaker, Huaping, right in front of her. Their behavior got worse, borrowing money to gamble, and when they lost, they planned to sell her to the debt collectors. Now, she had to escape, to get away from these two monsters. If she didn't escape today, she'd never be able to escape as a blind person. The sound of footsteps crunching over dry leaves reached Lu Jiling's sensitive ears. These weren't Feng Chao and Huaping's footsteps. It had brought hope, but she didn't dare make a sound. She couldn't let them catch her again. The footsteps got closer, then suddenly stopped. A man's cold, hoarse voice came from above her. "Miss Lu, whose child are you carrying?" Hearing the voice, all the memories of that night came flooding back to Lu Jiling, the closed room, the oppressive atmosphere. Her world began to crumble, turning into a heap of ashes. Thinking about all this made Lu Jiling's face turn pale. She tried to run, but a man grabbed her wrist tightly. "You think you can run?" he snarled. She struggled hard, yelling, "Let me go!" But the man's grip was too strong. He noticed her injured foot and started dragging her away. Lu Jiling screamed, "No, let me go!" She was terrified of going back to that dark place. She was forced into a car, collapsing onto the leather seat. She felt like she had escaped a wolf's den only to fall into a tiger's lair. What could she do now? Suddenly, someone grabbed her injured foot. She gasped quietly, "Don't touch me." The man sitting across from her gently played with her smooth feet in his hand. His voice was soft and magnetic, like a lover's whisper. "Poor thing, your foot is so hurt. It pains me to see it." Her skin was fair and smooth, her toes small and delicate, like precious artwork. But now, dirt and blood stains ruined the beauty. She felt like her foot was being held over burning oil, in intense pain, and she couldn't break free. The butler stood outside the car, watching silently. Clearing his throat, he said, "Miss Lu, you must know why we're here. We want to know who the father of your child is." Hearing this, Lu Jiling felt a wave of shame, her ears burning red. She pressed her lips together tightly, refusing to speak. A month ago, her first night at the nightclub was something Bo Wang knew all too well. Now, a month later, she was pregnant, and hearing questions like that naturally made it seem like she had been fooling around since then. But whether she had or not didn't matter. Since they asked, their purpose was clear. The butler's next words were polite but cold, "Miss Lu, we will take you to a Bo family's private hospital to recuperate. A child of the Bo family can't just be born out of nowhere. An illegitimate child is a joke, so whether the baby is the Bo family's or not, it can't stay." Lu Jiling took a long time to steady her breath before speaking. "Mr. Bo, the setup a month ago was planned by Feng Chao and Huaping. It had nothing to do with me. I never tried to cling on." She paused, then continued, "Please, just give me a chance. I'll leave and never come back." No one will ever know the Bo family's big boss has an illegitimate child. I don't want this baby either, but my body can't handle an abortion. She was almost begging, but as soon as she finished, a sharp pain shot through her foot. Bo Wang had pressed a cotton swab into her wound, making blood ooze out. He slowly lifted his eyes to look at her. Seeing her pale, pained face, his lips curled into a cruel smile. So you think you're innocent? Too bad, I don't believe there are any unplayable cards in this world. That night, she ended up with a child she shouldn't have. She had successfully angered Bo Wang. He took out a knife and placed it in front of her, sliding it slowly down her body until it stopped at her belly. His narrow eyes gleamed with a sick excitement. Looks like I've never seen a woman's insides. I bet they're more delicate than a man's, Bo Wang said. Lu Jiling couldn't help but feel a surge of anger and fear. How did she get mixed up with such a lunatic? Even though she had been shut away at home for the past 5 years, she had heard of his notorious reputation. Bo Wang, 25 years old, head of the Paigua Financial Group and the Bo family's eldest son and grandson, had a life full of expectations from birth. But at 5 years old, he and his mother were in a car accident that killed her instantly and left him missing. When the Bo family finally found him at age 20, he had become a ruthless enforcer for a casino, exuding a deadly aura and handling matters with brutal efficiency. In the 5 years since his return, his behavior only worsened, becoming more reckless and decadent. Single-handedly, he took charge of all the Bo family's dirty dealings. Everyone knew he was ruthless and cruel, and that crossing him meant certain death. With everyone else gone, Lu Jiling was the last one standing. She couldn't afford to die now. So, she gripped the knife desperately, her hand bleeding. Bo Wang was a bit shocked by her defiance. Lu Jiling begged desperately, I don't want to die. Please, let me go. But this only made him angrier. He grabbed her throat, choking her, making it hard for her to breathe as she struggled in vain. Just as Bo Wang was about to stab her, the butler at the door interrupted. The old lady called. She instructed you not to do anything rash and to marry Miss Lu immediately. The Bo family's child must be born legitimately. Bo Wang laughed maniacally. Am I the crazy one, or is the old lady crazy? Marry a woman who schemed her way into my bed? The old lady said if you don't agree, she and the old master will hang themselves at your door. And this, the butler said, holding up an item, the old lady said you'd agree to the marriage when you see this. Bo Wang angrily snatched the phone and glanced at it coldly. His expression hardened while Lu Jiling lay to the side, clutching her aching neck. A bit longer and she might have been done for. She turned her head, her eyes stinging with disbelief. For the first time, the dark void she always saw now had a thin layer of mist. Through the white haze, she could barely make out the outline of a man. She could see. The man sat sideways, giving her only a blurry profile. As she strained to see more clearly, he suddenly turned toward her. Though his face was still shrouded in mist, she could feel his icy gaze, like a bottomless abyss threatening to swallow her whole. Terrified, she tried to pull back, but Bo Wang held her arm tightly. His cold eye stared at her. The old lady has set the date. 3 days from now is a lucky day, and she will arrange everything for the wedding. All the necessary ceremonies will be there, the butler continued. The man's face suddenly loomed close, his voice magnetic and gentle. Fine, I'll marry Miss Lu. Eat well and rest up, so I can enjoy my time with you. 3 days later, at the wedding, there was only the bride. The groom was nowhere to be seen. Old Lady Ding Yujun, furious and dizzy with anger, shouted, on his wedding day, and he's still out messing around. Get me a rope. I'll hang myself at my dear grandson's door. A young woman, the daughter of Ding Yujun's close friend, whispered, Grandma, you know how he is. Don't upset yourself. Thankfully, today's guests are all family, so no one will gossip. Let's just go through the motions. Ding Yujun, still angry, protested, how can we go through the motions without the groom? A beautiful woman smirked at the sight of Lu Jiling, the blind bride, standing at the center. She can't see, so just find someone to stand in. The important thing is that she doesn't get upset and harm the baby." Ding Yujun frowned, looking at Lu Jiling. "This is too unfair to the poor girl," she said, but the woman interrupted. "The Lu family has been in ruins for years. Marrying into our family is a blessing for her." The woman seemed to think Lu Jiling couldn't hear her and spoke bluntly. However, after being blind for 5 years, Lu Jiling had developed an exceptionally keen sense of hearing. Now that her sight had returned, she glanced at the Bo family's old lady, finding her somewhat kinder than Bo Wang. The Bo family casually grabbed a tall maid to stand in for the absent groom. Pretending nothing was wrong, they completed the ceremony. Later, Lu Jiling was taken to a room. The maid informed her, "The young master is away on business and might not return tonight. You should rest early." Hearing the door close, Lu Jiling sighed and took off her wedding dress. After being blind for 5 years, she never expected she'd have to pretend to be blind again once her sight returned. Fortunately, Bo Wang wasn't coming home tonight, so Lu Jiling could finally get some much-needed sleep. It had been a long time since she slept well. She looked at her hands and noticed a small copper dog figurine. It was adorable. Her voice was a bit hoarse as she spoke to herself, "Dad, am I doing the right thing?" For the past 3 days, the Bo family had kept her in a sanatorium. From her room, she could see children playing outside. Bo family guards were stationed everywhere, making it impossible for her to escape. The butler and a lawyer stood coldly in front of her, saying, "Miss Lu, are you ready to become the young master's wife?" She found it ironic. They had locked her up, assuming she wouldn't escape or call for help. They thought she was greedy and shallow. Didn't she want to? She had already tried when she saw the true nature of the Bo family. She asked for help everywhere, even tried calling the police, but it was no use. The influential people quickly dismissed her as a spoiled rich girl who couldn't handle a downfall and was just being rebellious and unreasonable. She felt completely trapped, especially with such powerful people involved. So she calmly asked, "Can I really escape?" The butler was silent. Then he handed her 2 documents. "This one is a prenuptial agreement, and this one is a private agreement between Mr. Bo and Miss Lu. Your marriage will last only until the end of the nursing period. There's also a braille version you can read. The second document can't be made public. Officially, you'll be married, but once the nursing period is over, you'll be kicked out with nothing." The butler pushed up his glasses and continued, "Miss Lu, let's be clear. If it weren't for the old lady's interest in the child you're carrying, someone like you, who tried to trap our young master, would have disappeared by now. Marrying him is a benefit to us. If you refuse, the Bo family will never allow an illegitimate child to be born. Think about the consequences." Finally, she saw children playing, then she spoke. "I want their toys. If you buy them for me, I'll sign the papers." The butler looked at her like she was crazy. They probably thought she was insane. But they don't know that those copper toys were handmade by Master Yu Qing and were bought by her dad at a sky-high price as a birthday gift. The Lu family had fallen, the family members were gone, and everything had been taken away. Now she had to rely on the Bo family to get back her family's old possessions. The large indoor pool, lit up with colorful lights like a nightclub, was dazzling. Young guys and girls were splashing around in the pool, drinking and yelling, playing water tag. Bo Wang was sitting on the couch, lost in the shadows, his sharp features barely visible. Then he got a message. The copper toys were damaged at the bottom and weren't worth much, but she signed the papers quickly after getting them. He was suddenly all lively again. Ji Ling was treating him like a fool. Just then, a woman cozied up to Bo Wang, her voice seductive as she draped herself over him. "Why don't you join us, Mr. Bo? Everyone says you're always alone and so gloomy." The woman continued, "I heard your mother died early, and you only came back to the Bo family 5 years ago. It must be tough without a mom. If you ever want to talk, I'm here to listen." Bo Wang, emotionless, grabbed her chin and coldly asked, "What do you want to play?" This little move made the woman think the rumors about Bo Wang being terrifying were false. She saw him as a rich, understanding guy and wanted to seize the chance. Boldly, she slowly caressed his chest, trying to seduce him. "I'll play anything with you. I love excitement," she said. Bo Wang's face darkened. "Let's play whack-a-mole." Before she could react, Bo Wang shoved her into the pool with a loud splash. Her scream drew a crowd, and he started throwing money into the pool. The woman resurfaced, eyes gleaming at the sight of the money. "Ha ha, I'm rich." Soon, others jumped into the pool, scrambling for the cash. Standing above them, he held a whip and declared, "Whoever grabs this whip and hits the mole gets to keep the pool money. The more you hit, the more you get. That's what you get for crossing me." The woman suddenly understood what Bo Wang meant by whack-a-mole and tried to swim away in fear. But the whip was already in someone's hand, and they started cracking it on the water, making it nearly impossible for her to find her way out. He realized how much money was at stake and laughed, even though she was screaming in pain. Then a skinny man, Li Minghui, walked over to Bo Wang and respectfully handed him a stack of photos. Bo Wang looked at the photos and confirmed that Lu Jiling hadn't been with any man after that night. The baby must be his. Bo Wang glanced at the photos. He commented on the two battered figures in the pictures, saying the damage was undeniable, and he sympathized with how ruthless Li Minghui had become after following him. Li Minghui smiled, explaining that the scandal was not the sister-in-law's doing and that she was innocent. She was often beaten and humiliated by the couple. He asked if Bo Wang wanted to avenge her. Bo Wang stared at him coldly, making Li Minghui feel a chill down his spine. "You call her sister-in-law now?" Bo Wang said icily. Li Minghui trembled, realizing Bo Wang had no women around for years and thought this one might be special, even if she was part of a scam. "Did I guess wrong?" Bo Wang's voice was colder. "Did you think I'd reward you with a red envelope for knocking her up?" Li Minghui felt like his whole body was breaking down, his legs turning to jelly from fear. "I was wrong, Brother Wang," Li Minghui stammered. "I just read the info. Lu Jiling is really innocent." Bo Wang snorted. "Innocent?" With enough benefits at stake, no one stays innocent. In this hypocritical world, everyone is a devil. Meanwhile, the woman trying to seduce Bo Wang was still being whipped by the men, who couldn't think of making more money without hitting her. Bo Wang's frown deepened. That woman is either stupid or hiding something deep. I'll tear off her skin myself to see her true face. On the other side, Lu Jiling was fast asleep, mumbling, "No, don't." Her father had 6 sons before finally having a precious daughter, Lu Jiling. She was spoiled by her family. Whenever her brothers saw her cry, they would comfort her and help her out. Her grandfather even gave her the authority to manage the Lu family, and her brothers didn't oppose. She was happy with her family's love until the fire that took them all, leaving her alone. Lu Jiling suddenly woke up from her nightmare, drenched in cold sweat. She knew she couldn't go back to the past. Maid Jiang Fusheng opened the door, looking shocked. "Young madam, you're already dressed?" Lu Jiling, neatly dressed, sat quietly by the bed, looking graceful and gentle, like a beautiful painting. She smiled faintly. "I'm just blind, not incapable of taking care of myself." She lifted her hand, showing a bruise she got on purpose to match her blind person. She didn't want anyone to know she could see again. It was easier to see people's true colors this way, but she also didn't want anyone watching her every move. Jiang Fusheng was even more shocked. "You're hurt. You shouldn't be moving around recklessly since you're pregnant." Lu Jiling calmly responded, "If you get me a cane, I won't get hurt." Jiang Fusheng, seeing she couldn't argue, helped her to the dining room. The mansion was enormous, with hallways that seemed to go on forever. Strange faces of the servants occasionally peeked out. Everyone was whispering and stealing glances at Lu Jiling, the poor woman who suddenly married into the Bo family while pregnant. "Look at her, Mr. Bo must be so disappointed to marry a blind woman," one of them said. "Their wedding night was a joke, and now she'll just suffer," added another. Jiang Fusheng shot them a harsh glare, calling them gossiping snakes before turning to comfort Lu Jiling. "Don't listen to them, young madam. You were personally chosen by the old lady as the eldest grandson's wife. Better days are ahead. But when Jiang Fusheng looked back at Lu Jiling, she was stunned. She walked forward with calm elegance, completely unbothered by their words. She had a serene grace, like moonlight, cool yet gentle. Lu Jiling smiled slightly. Can you tell me about the mansion's layout? Jiang Fusheng couldn't read her expression. The main building has 6 floors. The first floor is for common areas and guest rooms. The second floor is Mr. Bo's office. You and the young master live on the 3rd floor. The upper floors are where the other family members stay. If you want to explore, there are various courts, an archery range, a ski field, a theater, a botanical garden, and a training ground in the back. This was a subtle hint about the complex relationships in the mansion and to avoid wandering around too much. Despite her sheltered life, Lu Jiling had heard rumors about the complicated relationships and numerous people in the family. For example, Mr. Bo's father had 2 famous mistresses, Yun Fei, a well-known actress who had a son and a daughter with him, and Xia Mai Qin, Mr. Bo's secretary who also became a significant figure due to her son. They had been rivals for years but never managed to take the top spot, staying as his companions and constantly appearing in tabloids. Jiang Fusheng whispered, "We're at the dining room. You'll meet one of the mistresses today, but I don't know which one." Suddenly, a basketball came flying at Lu Jiling. Jiang Fusheng was startled, but Lu Jiling kept walking calmly, her eyes vacant, moving steadily forward. The ball missed her, brushing past her. "What's going on?" she asked calmly. "A basketball." Jiang Fusheng let out a sigh of relief, but before he could finish speaking, a little boy stormed out, glaring at Lu Jiling. "Get out of my house, you blind witch," he shouted. The young master of the Bo family continued to shout, "Why didn't that ball hit you?" She thought, "He's so ruthless even at a young age. He'll probably become a killer like Bo Wang in the future. But that's none of my business." Then she said, pretending nothing had happened, as if she were taunting him, "Did someone say something?" Infuriated, the boy stuck his hand out in front of her. He was extremely cruel. "You shameless woman, forcing my brother to marry you because you're pregnant." Lu Jiling kept walking. The boy raised his eyebrow in triumph, trying to trip her. But she lifted her leg and stomped hard on his foot. His scream echoed through the dining room. Lu Jiling feigned ignorance. "What's wrong?" she asked. Xia Mai Qin, a beautiful woman, rushed over. "What did you do to my son?" Lu Jiling slowly bent down. "Sorry, I didn't see. Is there a child here? Where is he?" She continued to step on the boy's foot, making him scream even louder. Someone picked the boy up, extremely anxious. "Quick, get Dr. Lu to take a look." Fusheng was worried. "What are we going to do? Being targeted by Lady Xia is no joke." Despite Xia Mai Qin's high status, it couldn't compare to Bo Wang, the old lady's favorite grandson. Lu Jiling had married Bo Wang, so naturally, she would make the most of it. Xia Mai Qin seemed fierce but was actually harmless, just a small player. Yu Yunfei sat with Lu Jiling at dinner, watching her kindly. "Don't feel bad. It wasn't your fault. Xiaozhen is just too naughty. Xia Mai Qin usually treats her son like he's the most precious thing in the world, so she probably won't let you off easily. She's fierce and doesn't even respect the old lady, but don't worry, I won't abandon you." Lu Jiling nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Aunt Yu," she said, then picked up another piece of the dessert and told the maid, "This is good, can I have another piece?" Yu Yunfei watched her eat and felt a bit jealous. She thought Lu Jiling should be upset after being tripped and scolded, but here she was, eating like nothing happened. Did Bo Wang marry a wooden block? A maid walked over and whispered something into Yu Yunfei's ear. After being blind for 5 years, Lu Jiling can hear every word. "Sir's flight lands tonight. He's heading straight to the Maple Forest district and staying at the Vienna International Hotel. His schedule is secret." Xia Mai Qin didn't know this yet. Yu Yunfei leaned in and whispered, "Book me a room at that hotel." She wanted to accidentally run into Bo Wang's father. Ever since Xia Mai-chin showed up, her heart had been swayed. If it weren't for her 2 kids, she might have been kicked out already. She had to win he back. Xia Mai-chin stormed back in. Lu Jiling, you can still eat after what you did to Xiaozhen? I'm going to break your leg. Lu Jiling quickly stood up, spilling her milk. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, she stammered, stepping back and bumping into Yu Yunfei's maid, causing her phone to drop. Xia Mai-chin glanced at the phone screen and suddenly realized something. She looked sharply at Yu Yunfei. Why did you book a hotel room? And at the Maple Forest district? Yu Yunfei smiled gently. There's a concert there. Xia Mai-chin was suspicious. A concert? Master will be back soon. This can't be that simple. She lost interest in scolding Lu Jiling and walked out. Yu Yunfei watched Xia Mai-chin leave, feeling angry. She glared at her maid. You can't even hold onto a phone properly. The maid looked hurt. How could she have known the blind young mistress would turn around suddenly? Lu Jiling still looked bewildered, standing there until Yu Yunfei hurried off. The maid let out a sigh of relief. Wow, you're really lucky, young mistress. Lu Jiling brushed her hair back and smirked slightly. Yes, I'm very lucky. Now that I've avoided this trouble, it's time to deal with those who hurt me. She headed to a hospital, supported by the maid. As they walked around a corner, they overheard a cautious voice from a nearby room. Mr. Bo, you need to be careful with the whip, you could hurt yourself if you're not. Lu Jiling perked up at the mention of Bo and glanced into the room, seeing a masked doctor dressing someone's wounds. She couldn't see the man clearly but noticed his legs casually crossed and his black pants sharply pressed. She couldn't even hear him breathing heavily, like he didn't feel any pain at all. Could it be Bo Wang? She looked away and kept walking. Whatever, there's more than one person with the last name Bo, she thought. The maid helped Lu Jiling stop in front of a hospital room door. She was about to knock when Lu Jiling confidently placed her hand on the doorknob and pushed it open. The maid's eyes widened in surprise, thinking, wow, young mistress is so good at finding the doorknob, she doesn't seem blind at all. Inside, the hospital room was bleak, with 2 beds, each occupied by heavily bandaged patients. One had their foot suspended, looking pitiful. A middle-aged man with graying hair stood by the window, looking haggard. When he saw Lu Jiling, his eyes reddened, and he fell to his knees, bowing deeply and trembling all over. Jiang Fusheng was startled, wondering why the man was being so formal out of the blue. Lu Jiling released the maid's hand and walked past the kneeling man without a glance, heading straight to the center aisle between the 2 beds. The barely alive patients, Feng Chao and Huaping, lay there. Seeing Lu Jiling staring at her, Feng Chao felt both scared and shocked. He squeezed his eyes open and glared at her. Lu Jiling looked away, her eyes vacant, and smiled faintly. Feng Chao, you must be surprised to see me still alive and well. Huaping, lying on the bed next to him, weakly shouted, you blind witch. How did Bo Wang let you go? This is impossible, Bo Wang is a monster. How did you escape without being harmed or forced into an abortion? Lu Jiling stood there, extending her cane, tapping both patients accurately, causing them to twitch in pain. She finished, leaving Jiang Fusheng wincing on their behalf. The 2 patients were too weak to resist, only able to mutter curses. Lu Jiling, seemingly unaffected, said, thanks to you both, I am now the eldest grandson's wife of the Bo family. Feng Chao and Huaping's eyes widened in shock. Lu Jiling continued, as long as I, Lu Jiling, live, I won't forget your great kindness. She kept hitting them until they passed out again. The room fell silent. The middle-aged man knelt on the floor, his voice trembling, Miss, you did the right thing. These beasts deserve this. It's my fault for not recognizing them and letting them torment you for so long. It's all my fault. Lu Jiling turned to Fenggan, noticing the silver in his hair. She walked over and helped him up gently, saying, I never blamed you. Without you, I would have died 5 years ago. 5 years ago, the Lu family was destroyed, leaving a suddenly blind girl behind. Everyone avoided me, but you always protected me. Fenggen refused to stand, insisting, "Don't worry, I will give you an explanation, a resolution for Mr. and Mrs. Lu in heaven." Lu Xiling looked at him calmly. "How will you explain? By killing them and then yourself? I know you too well, Fenggen. You will do that." She continued, "Every time I got beaten, Feng Chao took me to different hospitals. We can gather all the medical records and use them to send them to jail. That's my solution." Fenggen was deeply regretful, tormented by guilt. "Miss, it's all because of my no-good son that you had to suffer so much." Lu Xiling looked at him with eyes that were both bitter and resilient. "That's why I need to start over. But I have no foundation, I need someone to help me." Fenggen was lost in his remorse until he realized that Lu Xiling was staring at him. He was shocked. "Miss, have your eyes healed?" Lu Xiling smiled. "I can see now, Uncle Feng." Fenggen was overjoyed, crying tears of happiness. "That's amazing, truly amazing." A loud bang interrupted them, and they turned to see Jiang Fusheng trying to sneak out of the room. When she saw them looking, her face turned pale. "Young mistress, I didn't hear anything, I swear. Why is this happening to me?" She was someone with no dreams, choosing to work for the Bo family like her parents after graduation to spend more time with them. She lived in a mansion, had a high salary, and an easy job. Her parents didn't agree, saying that dealing with the complex family dynamics in a large family wouldn't suit someone as simple-minded as her. And now she was hearing about this new wife of the eldest grandson who pretended to be blind, tortured 2 patients until they passed out, and claimed she had no foundation. If she heard everything, wouldn't she be silenced? Lu Xiling walked towards her, eyes devoid of any hesitation. "I was going to keep it from you, but you follow me around all the time. I can't hide everything from you." Feeling the pressure, Jiang Fusheng clung to the door, wailing like Feng Chao, "Don't come near me. I'll scream, I really will." Lu Xiling stopped in front of her, her skirt gently swaying, her expression clear. Jiang Fusheng collapsed to the floor and fainted, making it 3 unconscious people in the room. Lu Xiling pressed her temples in frustration. So fragile, she thought. 5 days later, Lu Xiling sat on the carpet, the aroma of tea filling the room. The key to good tea isn't the leaves, but the brewing technique. "How have you progressed in the past 5 days?" Jiang Fusheng sat across from Lu Xiling, holding a notebook and writing down each step of the tea-making process. Still confused, she called out, "Madam." Lu Xiling glanced at her, signaling not to call her that anymore. Jiang Fusheng watched her, remembering how calm and patient Lu Xiling was, just like at the hospital when she explained everything until it all made sense. She realized Lu Xiling wasn't pretending to be blind for some scheme or to cause trouble in the Bo family. She just wanted to start over and reclaim her family's heirlooms, hoping to eventually return them to her old home in Jiangnan. A maid once told her that Lu Xiling's family used to be the top family in K country and that their belongings were priceless. She also mentioned that Lu Xiling probably couldn't afford to get any of it back now. Lu Xiling just smiled and said, "You never know until you try. I've already lost the people, I can't lose the things too." Switching topics, Lu Xiling asked about Bo Wang, lowering her voice as she spoke mysteriously. "Have you found out anything?" The maid replied that Bo Wang lost his memory after a car accident when he was 5 and ended up being raised by a butcher. The butcher treated him terribly, feeding him scraps and making him work all day and night. He would even tie him up and throw him in a dog cage to sleep, sometimes next to skinned sheep. Bo Wang only escaped when a fire broke out at the slaughterhouse. Lu Xiling suddenly couldn't drink her tea anymore, disgusted by the child abuse. She thought Bo Wang's current violent tendencies might be due to that trauma, and she was glad he escaped the fire. The maid, still naive, seemed to think gathering information on Bo Wang was to get on his good side, hoping for a loving relationship since they were married and had a baby. But Lu Xiling knew better. She planned to end the marriage after the nursing period, about 2 years, using that time to get what she wanted. Her eyes darkened as she thought about how her husband hadn't been home for a week. Shouldn't a wife send him something to show she cares? Jiang Fusheng, misinterpreting her thoughts, grinned and said, "You must like him, right? You like him, don't you?" About 10 minutes later, the fancy car stopped in front of the biggest club in Jiangbei City, the Black Spade Club. Lu Jiling got out and silently looked at the bustling entrance. The maid had found out that tonight was the final selection for the Pink Queen competition, and all the rich guys and ladies would be there to support their favorites, making it a super lively event. The young master usually came to this club a lot, but he wasn't here tonight. And that was exactly what she wanted. If Bo Wang wasn't around, she could use his connections to make some money. They walked inside, and the greeter handed them red honor flowers. Jiang Fusheng, holding a box of tea leaves, explained that for the final vote, she stick the flower on whoever she want to support. Just then, a man came up and called out to Jiang Fusheng. He was Ji Jing, the second young master of the Ji family, known for hanging out with a group of rich, idle followers. Jiang Fusheng politely bowed to him. Ji Jing smiled and said, "Here to find Bo Wang again? But he's not here tonight." Jiang Fusheng pretended to be surprised. "Oh no, I came to bring him some tea. What do I do if he's not here?" Ji Jing noticed Lu Jiling and grabbed her hand, saying, "Who's this? You should introduce me to this beauty. Want to have a drink with me?" Lu Jiling frowned at his flirty behavior, but the maid quickly stepped in, saying, "You have good taste. She's the tea master that the old lady likes best. How about she makes you some tea?" Ji Jing agreed, saying he had a bit of a headache from drinking and could use some tea to sober up. Jiang Fusheng and Lu Jiling exchanged glances and headed to a booth to start making tea. A bunch of rich guys sat around Ji Jing, chatting. The dazzling lights flashed around them. As Lu Jiling gracefully made tea, the fragrant aroma began to spread, even covering the smell of alcohol. The guys who had been talking couldn't help but be drawn in, watching her quietly. Ji Jing had only asked casually, but when he smelled the tea, he couldn't help but reach out for a cup. Ji Jing blew away the steam from his cup and took a sip. The rich, smooth taste slid down his throat, and the lingering aroma made him feel almost sober after just one sip. The other rich guys saw this and all wanted a cup too. Lu Jiling poured tea for them, and the fragrant scent spread even further. More people started gathering around, but there were only so many teacups. Jiang Fusheng smiled and said, "I didn't bring much tea today. If you want more, you can buy it from Fengjin at Gichi Tower. I learned tea making from my aunt, and it's finally paying off." Lu Jiling thought making money is hard, but making money off the rich isn't that tough if you play your cards right. If we can make a name for Gichi Tower tonight, it won't be hard to keep these guys coming back for more. Then she said, "Today's task is done. I'm going to the restroom, and will leave when I get back." Then she walked down a quiet hallway. It was much quieter here, with no one around. After a while, she heard a faint sound from a nearby room. The door was slightly open, and she saw a tall man inside, drinking with one hand in his pocket. His side profile was striking, and his posture was almost too perfect to be real. She thought to herself, can a man's waist really look that good? This must be one of the stars Jiang Fusheng mentioned, probably the main attraction tonight. Bo Wang finished his drink and suddenly turned to look at her, his sharp gaze piercing through the dim light. Lu Jiling was taken aback but tried to keep her cool. This guy's sharp gaze made her realize he was no ordinary man, he was clearly used to handling all kinds of situations. She took 2 fluffy flowers out of her pocket and stuck them on the door, hoping he'd be tonight's top choice at the club. After putting up the flowers, Lu Jiling turned and left the club. An hour later, the big showdown of the night was about to start. The manager thanked Bo Wang for coming and even got a special room ready for him. That's when Bo Wang noticed the 2 flowers on the door, their bright colors standing out. His expression turned icy as he asked, "Who put these here?" The room went dead silent, and everyone inside dropped to their knees, terrified. Bo Wang's cold stare swept over the crowd as he held the 2 fluffy flowers in his hand. Curious to find out who was behind this, the manager pulled up all the security footage. Someone had actually dared to treat Bo Wang like a common performer. This was a huge insult to him. Bo Wang's gaze zeroed in on something, and he asked, "Who's that on the footage?" He recognized the person, but couldn't quite place them. One of the terrified employees quickly replied, "It's Xiao Fu Sheng, your family's young maid. She came to deliver tea earlier. And the one with her is the tea master favored by your grandmother." Bo Wang clenched the fluffy flowers tightly in his hand. He was determined to find out which sneaky person had dared to humiliate him. He rushed home, furious and ready to confront whoever had disrespected him. When Lu Jiling got home, she saw the servants moving paintings around. Curious, she asked why there were no famous paintings among them. The maid explained that they were drawn by the young master when he was a child. He started painting at 3, and by 4, he was winning awards and exhibiting his work everywhere. But ever since he came back home, he hadn't painted a single piece, leaving his grandmother heartbroken. Just then, the maid received a message from a rich heir. She read it and her jaw nearly dropped. "Oh my gosh, there's breaking news. Second young master Ji just said that the first young master went on a rampage at the club." Lu Jiling glanced at her. "What do you mean, a rampage? Isn't Bo Wang not supposed to be at the club today?" The maid continued, "I got it wrong. Apparently, someone mistook the first young master for a gigolo and stuck 2 voting flowers on his door." She freaked out on the spot. When she heard about it, she realized those were the flowers she put up. "Oh no," Lu Jiling thought. "The one time I had to face him, my vision wasn't fully recovered, so I didn't recognize his face. And now I accidentally caused this mess. Is it serious?" Lu Jiling asked, feeling a bit stiff. "Of course it is," the maid replied. When the first young master was working as a bodyguard in Northport, he was forced to work as a gigolo once. A bunch of men pushed him into a rich lady's room. But those guys who did it to him were later carried out, all covered in bruises. They had to clean the blood in that room for 3 days. Lu Jiling sat up straight, looking at the maid with eerie calm. "Guess where our 2 flowers are now?" Zhong Fusheng froze, then realized and was scared out of his mind. "Are you crazy? You need to get out of here." But Lu Jiling wasn't scared. She popped a grape into her mouth to calm down. "I just thought he was a gigolo because he was wearing the same white shirt as the guys on stage." She kept eating cherries, apples, peaches, mangoes, until she was full and calm. She thought for a moment. Is Bo Wang always so ruthless, or does he make exceptions for the people he loves? If he does, maybe he won't be so harsh on those who love him back. Can't he be a little more forgiving? At least not treat them like enemies? Soon, she came up with an idea and asked the maid to help her with something. Just then, Bo Wang stormed back home. A maid quickly approached him. "I've already prepared a late-night snack for you in the kitchen. Is there anything specific you'd like to eat?" But he didn't even glance at him and headed straight to the bridal room, a dark, mischievous smile forming on his lips as he neared his target's door. People often look for trouble, but rarely do they seek death. Tonight should be interesting. As he got closer, he heard voices from inside the room. "Young madam, I'm sorry. You asked me to bring the tea master from the tea house to deliver tea to the young master. I couldn't find him. It's not your fault. But I don't understand. If you want to give tea to the young master, why do you have to say it's from the household? He misunderstands me. My concern only makes him uncomfortable. Everyone in the house says you are his wife, but why do you seem so cautious? It looks like you have feelings for the young master." Bo Wang listened intently from outside. Lu Jiling only feared him, but hearing the word feelings, he was stunned. What a ridiculous way to seduce someone, he thought. Inside, another voice continued, "I've known him for a long time. When I was learning to paint as a child, I saw a painting called Birth online. I was captivated and later insisted on becoming his disciple. Then I found out it was painted by the eldest son of the Bo family. We were just children back then, but I decided to marry him." Bo Wang almost choked on this. This method of seduction was certainly unique, not caring about looks or family background but falling for the painting. Bo Wang had no patience to listen any further and walked straight into the room. Jiang Fusheng was startled, looking fearfully at the tall man standing at the room. Bo Wang walked over, told the maid to leave, and then grabbed Lu Jiling's chin. "You and your maid have a nice chat," he said. The maid, terrified, fled the room immediately. Bo Wang stared at her for a long time, trying to calm the sudden irritation he felt. "So, tell me about that painting. What made you decide to marry me because of it?" His voice had a mocking tone. Lu Jiling blushed, embarrassed from being eavesdropped on. "I just found it interesting," she said. Bo Wang laughed. "Never seen a duck lay an egg?" His eyes flicked to a fruit knife on the coffee table. Lu Jiling shook her head. In the painting, the first thing the little duck sees when it hatches is a sunrise by the sea. It hears the crack of an egg in the corner. Bo Wang picked up the fruit knife and slowly walked towards her. She kept talking, unaware of the danger. "There was a tiny crab claw poking out of the sand on the beach," she continued. Bo Wang raised the knife, aiming for her eyes, but she stayed still, smiling softly as she remembered. "The duckling is the main focus, but the whole painting captures the early morning sun. That's why I found it so fascinating." Bo Wang lowered the knife, his smile freezing. A blind woman in a house full of liars, he thought. He wasn't angry at her confession, but his moods were unpredictable. One moment he was affectionate, the next he wanted her dead, using the knife to test if she was really blind. Realizing she truly was blind, he dropped the knife. The sharp sound made Lu Jiling flinch, scared. "What did you just drop?" she asked nervously. Bo Wang suddenly grabbed her chin, making her feel like she was being strangled. Her breath caught, body tensing, but he didn't hurt her further. He gently stroked her chin and lips, his deep voice eerily gentle in the night breeze. "You fell in love with me because of a painting." Now, Lu Jiling truly understood Bo Wang's terrifying nature. It wasn't about the evil things he'd done, but his unreadable emotions. She never knew if she'd be safe or in danger the next second. She pressed her lips together hard for a few seconds, then seemed to gather her courage. "Yes, I like you. I like the person who painted that picture." Bo Wang paused, caught off guard by her sudden, firm confession. Lu Jiling lowered her eyes and said humbly, "I know I'm not worthy. I know you don't believe me. It wasn't some scheme to trap you. I also know you're the eldest son of the Bo family, and I'm just a disabled person. I'm well aware of my position. Whether you believe it or not, I really didn't want this child. If it weren't for the fact that I couldn't have an abortion, I wouldn't have wanted to cause you any trouble." As she spoke, her voice grew softer and more trembling, perfectly portraying the hurt and the last bit of fragile dignity someone might have when facing ridicule from a beloved. "I do like you. I wanted to get close to you, to care about you, to understand what kind of person you are. But I have no improper intentions towards you. When the agreement is over, I'll leave immediately and won't cling to you." Her words sounded truly pitiful, but Bo Wang just saw her blink rapidly, struggling to control her emotions, and then tears fell from her eyes. She really meant it. His smile faded, and he watched her intently in the dim light. He reached out, grabbed the back of her neck, and pulled her into his arms, pressing a hard kiss to her lips. Lu Jiling didn't resist at all, just her long lashes fluttering, her cheeks gradually turning pink, revealing her inner turmoil. Bo Wang's dark eyes captured every tiny reaction, and as he pried her lips open, his soft touch was both invasive and domineering. Lu Jiling was momentarily stunned, then she wrapped her arms around his neck, lifting her face to greedily kiss him back. She really dared. Bo Wang grabbed the back of her neck and pulled her away, his gaze fixed on her flushed lips, feeling a sudden, painful desire. He forced down the wild thoughts and asked in a low, emotionless voice, "Do you really like me that much?" Lu Jiling's face darkened. "If you don't believe me, no matter how many times I say it," he interrupted her, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "What if I asked you to die?" Lu Jiling had imagined many possible responses, but she was still stunned by his words. This man was twisted, but faced with a wife who liked him because of a painting, he found his resolve shaken. Bo Wang glanced at her reaction with a mocking smile, then turned and walked out without saying anything else. Lu Jiling was left staring at his back, confused by his words. After a while, Jiang Fusheng sneaked in, closed the door, and walked over to her. The young master has gone to the study. He probably won't come back for a while. Did you pass? Lu Jiling finally relaxed, loosening her right hand, which had been clenched tightly by her side, revealing a bloody mess. The blood had covered the tiny blade in her palm. Jiang Fusheng was shocked and asked, "What are you doing?" Lu Jiling, now regaining her vision, explained that she had to force herself not to dodge the knife attack. She had inflicted intense pain on herself to make sure she wouldn't flinch. She pulled out a tissue, wrapped the 3 broken blade pieces, and handed them to Jiang Fusheng for disposal. Jiang Fusheng, still in disbelief, asked, "Why did you do this?" Lu Jiling nodded. Bo Wang had placed the fruit knife in the room as a hint, testing her. Talking about feelings was just a way to divert the main issue. In the dimly lit study, Bo Wang sat expressionless at the desk, his mind preoccupied. He had recognized her from the surveillance footage. If she had been pretending to be blind all this time, then it made sense why she had reacted the way she did. Bo Wang had set up the fruit knife to test her, to see if she was faking her blindness. Bo Wang realized that her feelings for him, which stemmed from a painting, were true. Even though he might have misunderstood her initially, the evidence confirmed her sincerity. Her actions proved that she wasn't trying to insult him, but rather showed her genuine affection, hoping to avoid his hysterical retaliation. But for now, it seemed that Bo Wang believed the main tea master wasn't her, so he didn't suspect Jiang Fusheng. After hearing her explanation, Jiang Fusheng was completely in awe. "How did you come up with all this so quickly? That's amazing!" However, this wasn't over yet. Lu Jiling had the maid notify Uncle Feng to quickly make 2 fluffy flowers to handle the tea team from the club, hoping this whole mess would end as just a misunderstanding. Jiang Fusheng looked at her frightening wound and couldn't help but marvel at how harsh she was on herself. But for Lu Jiling, it was no big deal, better to hurt herself than to have Bo Wang hurt her. Jiang Fusheng, a bit nosy, asked, "Did you really like the young master since you were a kid?" Lu Jiling answered simply, "No, I made it all up." Jiang Fusheng's jaw dropped. "You acted so well, I thought you really had a crush on him." Lu Jiling smiled, thinking back to Bo Wang's recent behavior. She couldn't help but wonder, how could someone tell someone else to go die after hearing a confession? What kind of person was he, really?